Well, episode 3 of season 3 of The Mandalorian gives us The Convert. Gee, I wonder what that could be. Wow, there's actually 2 choices here, and both are correct. So we pick up where we left off, back at the Living Waters, and of course, Bo-Katan is like, holy crap, that monster's real. And Din Djarin wakes up, but he didn't see the monster or nothing. But he got his bath, so he's good. And Bo-Katan, for reasons of her own, decides not to share that she did see the mythical beast. That is not so much myth anymore, you know. And so they hop back in their ships, and they're cruising along, you know. And then they get into a TIE fighter fight. Seems Bo-Katan stole one of their ships, and they're not happy about it. And so they get into a dogfight. Some fairly decent action. Din Djarin mans the guns and then has to bail out to get to his starfighter to give her some backup. And, you know, it's classic Star Wars dogfight type stuff. Of course they win. Apparently, Din Djarin's old Naboo starfighter has a photon torpedo, but TIE fighters don't. Boy, the Empire really dropped the ball on that one, didn't they? But in the end, they drop bombs on Bo-Katan's house. They blow out all the smithereens. Oh, boy, is she mad. She wants revenge. She starts shooting at him. But then Din Djarin sees on his radar, oh, crap, another squadron of TIE fighters is on the way, which is a lot more serious. It would appear that, I'm assuming, that this is a little bit more than just she stole one of their ships or what have you. Seems the Empire is really gunning for Bo. So they skedaddle, and she's like, well, where do we go? And somewhere where they won't think to look. And off they go. So then we cut back to Coruscant. Coruscant. We haven't seen the city planet in a long time. Well, I mean, I guess if you count Obi-Wan, but I don't. And then there's Andor, so you saw a lot of it there. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So anyway, whatever happened to that clone doctor? Well, not that anyone cared, but hey, you find out in this episode. He's been through a rehabilitation program. So there's an amnesty program for people who served the Empire. Because, hey, look, there's only so much space for prisons, and most of them, well, you know, they didn't mean it. And so they're going through this program to be reintegrated back into society and working for the Republic. But I got to tell you, boy, the bureaucratic structure is pretty much all in place. Very dehumanizing. It's like it's Andor all over again for this poor bastard. It is. It's like, well, is the Republic any better? And I mean, there's scenes in here that does suggest it. You know, whether that was their intention or not, I don't know. But he is one of these guys who didn't realize until far too late that the Empire was evil. And he was working on the cloning science. And, of course, that's a callback to how the Clone Wars began and all that sort of stuff. And so that's what the plot seemed to be, where they were chasing baby Yoda, now Grogu, wanting his blood and all that. And he's saying, oh, this must be a nod to how the sequel trilogy turns out with, you know, Snoke clones and eventually the Emperor. Yeah, well, of course, the EU cloned the Emperor too, but they did it better. So the cloning is an aspect of the Star Wars story. And this was one of the guys who had the knowledge about it and believes that there's all kinds of great possibilities and good that would come from the technology and the ability to do so. Most notably, his mother could have been saved from her illness had the cloning science been available and that sort of thing, which was basically the inspiration for him to pursue this. But now he's basically just a bureaucrat clerk. And he's like, well, but, you know, I was on the losing side and I got to make amends and all that. He's pretty much accepting it. But then he meets some other guys who were in the amnesty program. And then this lady, who was also on Moff Gideon's ship, zeroes in on him and busts a move. No, she starts being his bestest buddy ever, getting him some biscuits that were only served on Imperial ships. Boy, I wonder how she got a hold of those. Well, and so she's clearly working him, wanting him to not give up on his cloning science crap and all this sort of stuff. And says, what if there's a way you could continue it in private? He's like, oh, really? And so she takes him. And they go on a little adventure to break out. They're supposed to stay in this particular complex until, their probation's over, I guess. And she takes him out to the shipyards. They jump on a train to get there. And, I could understand some amount of trains, but it's a flying train. Why not just have like a flying bus thing, but they have train cars just so they can have that train thing where you're being chased by the popo and you're running from one car to the next. They do that. But why would you make a flying train? Just make, a long tube thing that floats. It makes no sense at all. I mean, well, I guess it navigates around the buildings and stuff, maybe. But it's just to have that old, thing of where you're, the cops are coming, and the cops are droids, who seem to be kind of stupid and a little slow on this. Seems like the droid could have caught them pretty easily with superior strength and speed, but no, it was kind of a dumb droid. So anyway, they make it to the old shipyard, and there's all the Star Destroyers waiting to be dismantled and sold for scrap and all that kind of thing, But apparently, cloning technology, lab equipment, it's just sitting in there. So she gets him in, and of course, there's always a sinister note about her. And eventually, he gets what he needs, and they leave the ship. And then, halt! Where who goes there, and all this stuff. So they get arrested, and turns out she was a double agent, if you will, working for the Republic to root out bad people who claim they're good but are really bad. And so she basically stabbed him in the back and turned him over. She grabs the equipment that he had stored in a little carry-on box, and the next thing you know, the Republic's got him in a brainwashing machine. So that's the thing. It's like, and they have one of Admiral Akbar's people tell him, "Oh no, don't worry. We took all the painful stuff out. It's just gonna, readjust your thinking." So he's getting his lobotomy, kind of, sorta, and he says, "You're gonna make me forget. It's a mind flayer. You're gonna make me wipe my memories and all this stuff," and he's like, "Oh, no. We're just going to condition you," which is still robbing him of his own thought. So he'll still have his memories of what he did, but he'll be more compliant and less likely to do it again and this sort of thing, only because they're brainwashing him. They're forcing him to do it. So it's like, well, Republic, what was the war about anyway, So, and at the time I thought, okay, these are all Imperial agents working this guy, and they just, he went in and got the equipment. They didn't know how to get the right equipment, and they used him to do it. They wipe his memories, and then they take off with it. But no, that's not what it is. They're all Republic people, and what's her name? She says, hey, can I stay with him? I mean, he was still a friend of mine, even though, he screwed up. And they're like, sure, okay. And, and they got in, it's a trap joke because, yeah. So anyway, after they all leave, what does she do? Well, she turns up the voltage and fries his brain so that he can't remember anything. He'll probably, be a vegetable or whatever. And she eats one of the biscuits. So, yeah, she was totally evil and probably still working for, probably Thrawn, ultimately. And what happened to the clone stuff? Well, she had it, so I'm guessing the Republic thinks they've got it in the evidence room, but no, she probably wrapped that up with a bow on it and shipped it off to the Empire. Because, hey, why would they want to clone anything? Well, they want a Force user that they need because, hey, we really had something in Palpatine, but we don't have that now because he's dead. But what if we went back to that cloning stuff and cloned one of those Force users? Then we'd have something. We'd be back in business. So, yeah, there was some talk of Favreau saying, oh, yeah, well, so many years in between the original trilogy of films, or the 6 films, rather, and where we are, and then before we get to the sequel trilogy, meaning he's acknowledging the sequel trilogy, you know. And a lot of this, yes, pertains to what the sequel trilogy suggested, because the sequel trilogy was crap in and of itself. It didn't really spell out their plot. They barely had any stories in it, and that kind of thing. So a lot of people thinking, hey, would Favreau retcon the sequel trilogy through World Between Worlds and that sort of thing? But the other possibility is that he's trying to fix it. There's just no polishing that turd, and that he will incorporate more of what the expanded universe did and try to force it onto it around the edges, and then do stories after the sequel trilogy, you know, and some other series that he'll get to at some point. And see, it all makes sense and works now. I mean, what do we do? Luke Skywalker was a clone. The real Luke is out there somewhere. He got trapped in a black hole or something and was replaced by Jake Skywalker. And that's why things turned out the way. Yeah. But, well, that would be pretty rotten, wouldn't it? You can't, I don't care how good a writer you are. You can't polish that turd. It's a shame. Anyway, other than that, it was an okay episode, but I think a little too boring for a lot of people. But it's suggesting the overall plot of what the Empire is up to. Because at this point, you know, there's aspects of it that still exist. And what's their plan to reclaim power, which, you know, it's something they would do. But this depiction of the Republic is, it's not that great. Now, there again, that would be an aspect to say that the failures of the Republic, that it didn't really live up to its hype, and that creates problems down the road, would be a narrative. But of course, even that's not in the sequel trilogy. They didn't even think of that. It's like, why would anyone want to join a First Order or anything like that? And you needed something of that there, but they didn't bother because it was trash and lazy hack job stuff. So what are you going to do? Well, perhaps that is the deal with Favreau's approach to all of this. Yeah. So, but anyway, as for the convert, well, he was the convert. He was trying to ingratiate himself back into the Republic. He's a well-meaning guy. He is trying to make amends. And, well, he gets screwed over by his former comrades, or, well, one in particular anyway. And, well, that's sad. But who's the other convert? Well, it's Bo-Katan. She's back in the fold of the cult. Not quite, but she finds herself there. She gets Din Djarin back to her people. That's where they went to escape the TIE fighters and Empire and all that. And he had a sample of the living waters. He hands it over to the chiefess. She tests it and says, yep, that's it. So, all right, I'll take your word for it. You took a swim, you know. And so did Bo-Katan. So how you're both redeemed. And if you haven't taken your helmet off, then she said, yeah, I haven't. Oh, okay, there you go. You're back in the club. And, of course, her own crew abandoned her. So she's like, well, now I have a new crew. And I know there's something to this because she saw the monster. And then she's looking at the skull symbol on the wall and realizes, holy crap, that thing really is real. So that's the thing. She's reclaiming her Mandalorian faith. So, you know, isn't that nice? I don't know if I agree with the idea that we don't get to see Katie Sackhoff's face again. I'm not happy about that. What kind of idiot would cover that up? But anyway, so once again, the Mandalorian story is better. But, you know, it is what it is. Stories of the show's not doing as well as it did. Well, gee, I wonder why. it's a sabotaged show. Who knows where it would have really gone? I mean, some of these things I'm sure would have been a part of it, but not the way that was intended. And it's going to continue to struggle. And after terrible shows, with only Andor being interesting, but not enough because it wasn't Star Warsy enough for the Star Wars fan to take to, after a terrible Kenobi, a god-awful Boba Fett, although in my opinion Kenobi's even worse, and then after the sabotage over Gina Carano and all that nastiness, boy, do you have a Mount Everest hill to climb. And I don't think you got what it takes to do it. So, anyway, third episode, it's all right, I guess, but kind of disturbing here and there. Anyway, there you go, The Convert.